there, my name is Bernadette Smith, and I'm a keynote speaker and writer. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I found is there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data, but there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for stories we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these actions and policies to help you build a more inclusive world. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Mike Iannelli, him, co-founder and chief growth officer of Ablr. This week, our conversation is about BSL at Nissan, baby wearing statues in the UK, unplugged Australians, and more. Let's get started. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey,
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike.
We got a lot to cover today. So my name is Mike Iannelli. You can call me Iannelli either way, but I am the co-founder and chief growth officer of an organization called Ablr. We are a full-service disability inclusion and digital accessibility company. Our mission is people first. Not only do we do accessibility, but we also have a workforce development program that is bringing meaningful jobs to all people, folks with disabilities included, which is really our main drive. We also have inclusion training that helps corporations and organizations find their true meaning of inclusion and how do you incorporate that really from the foundation and ultimately, and then helping organizations and people find accessible products, accessible websites, accessible content so the world is universally created for all people. And that's really been our mission for the last 4 years. So it's really great to be here. Nice to spend some time with you, Bernadette.
Thanks, Mike. I always enjoy our conversations, and I love what you're up to with Ablr, especially your workforce development component. Can you talk a little bit about that program specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have multiple different educational tracks, but the premise of it is there are a large percentage of individuals who have struggled with disabilities and struggled with inclusion since the dawn of time, and our organization believes that all people should have the right for meaning and fulfillment, and that big part of that starts with career, since we spend most of our time working, which is something we should also talk about another day. But all people deserve that right to work, that right to have meaningful employment, that right to have fulfillment in what they do, and our organization works with state-level government and division services for the blind. We help them identify individuals who want to change their life, want to find the energy and the heart to do something different. We provide accessible tools. We recruit them. We take them through an assessment process to make sure this is something they're willing to put the work into, because it is an effort. It is not something that is easy. But we have a 16-week program. Our first program is about creating individuals and giving them the opportunities to earn their CPAC, their professional accessibility accreditation. So there's a 16-week program. We train them with one of our incredible trainers who used to be our senior accessibility analyst. She also has a visual impairment, and she takes those individuals through 16 weeks of incredibly intense program and training. We also provide mentorships. They all have a mentor that comes in. We provide 3 weeks of paid internships, and we also have a full-time position that is their core mission is to align with organizations that are like-minded, that are inclusive, that have what I'll call the human kindness gene that says we're all equal, we all deserve the same, and helps them find jobs, meaningful jobs, not just, hey, you're incapable, go push a button all day, but hey, you are capable no matter who you are, no matter what your life circumstances are, and you're capable of doing great things, and our goal is to help you get on that path to doing that.
I love that. And so you're based in North Carolina. Is your company serving organizations and governments around the country?
We are. It's a process, but we do have 4 currently that we're working with. I expect all 50, but we are rolling it out in a process that is scalable, that is sustainable, but also ensures that our people are getting through, they're getting the mentorship, the support they need, One of the areas that I will say is challenges, and we have a corporate America just says, okay, hey, you've gone through this 16-week program, you've got your certification, you've got your mentorship, you're ready to go, you got the tools, the skills, the know-how. But what we miss oftentimes is the mental health side, is that, you've been ostracized your entire existence, and all of a sudden now that we gave you a class and some training, you're just supposed to forget your prior existence, and your brain's supposed to magically get you to where you're supposed to be. And that is a hard lesson, and a lesson that we are committed to helping our people get through. It's important that we apply mental health around everything we do. I've struggled with mental health my entire life. I still do. Hopefully after our conversation prior that is gone. But it has been a journey for me, and it's a journey for all of us, and mental health support is critical in helping us all succeed. And so it's not just about getting people jobs, and it's not just about getting them through the system. It's about giving them the tools and the support they need to have a long and prosperous and fulfilling life. And that's really what the mission is about.
I love that. Well, it definitely aligns with 5 things. So we'll talk about the 5 things in just a minute. But on this week's 5 Things newsletter, I wrote about my first cruise vacation, which I took last week with my partner for a few days. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm on cruises or sort of in groups of strangers, I tend to be super sort of private. My partner's like chatty, and I'm like, kind of off on my own. I don't talk to strangers like that very much, for better or worse. I feel differently as a speaker and sort of in a professional capacity, but I realize that part of the reason I'm sort of closed off on places like cruises is I don't always feel safe to open myself up to judgment in that way. Even though I'm someone who hasn't really experienced a lot of discrimination in my lifetime, I still have those fears. And they mean that I could be missing out on some awesome conversations with people. And so I talk about this stuff in my work, and then I catch myself on a cruise being like closed off and shut down. And I think what sort of happens on vacation can sort of happen in teams. Like when we're afraid of judgment, we can be shut off, closed off, right? And so I wanted to share that with folks because it's always a journey. And I don't know what your experience has been, but I just kind of wanted to put that out there for folks to think about is, those micro fears of judgment that we have, they cause us to shut down and really miss out on the opportunity to connect with others.
Yeah, coming from that perspective, I mean, we're all God's children, at the end of the day. And, I think my position on it is, again, my position is based on what I've experienced over these last 4 years of my life and the 48 years I've lived, is that it's not our responsibility to criticize and hurt other people, although we all do growing up. We're part of this culture, we're part of this life, we're part of this engine, we're part of what this is, and we lose ourselves in it. And when we separate ourselves from what we are surrounded with, like the mountains or like finding God or whatever we briefed on earlier, you recognize that it's not our job to do that. Our job is to lift other people up. And so all the titles and the DEIs and the he hims and the he she's and all the things that culture has created, when you eliminate that, see, this is the part that I always struggle with, because when I think about what we do, to me, it's always about human inclusion. And again, that might be a subject that is sensitive, but if we strip away all the things about black and white and male and female and Christian and Muslim, and we start thinking about we're all here for a purpose. We don't necessarily know it. That's part of the journey of figuring out what that purpose is. But it sure as heck isn't to criticize and put people down. It's to lift them up. And so, when you take your example of the cruise, I'm kind of the opposite. At least I'm hoping that I'll become more reserved in my future. But I'm usually the one that's out there talking and filling up the noise. What I've also realized is I fill up the noise because I'm uncomfortable in my own skin, or at least have been. Silence makes me uncomfortable. I think I know why, because it probably instills a lot of doubt and fear of who I am. Am I a fraud? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And am I saying the right words? Am I looking the right way? Am I dressing the right way? And in the back of your head, subliminally, you're almost protecting yourself from getting hurt. And like you're mentioning, I think it's exactly the same. You're what you know has created a barrier or a wall to avoid pain. Because
That's right.
most people, I say most people, I believe most people are good. I think that most people are afraid to speak out for being good because they're going to be judged for either being a follower or being a Fruit Loop or whatever people like to criticize when people find a different way. And I think in to simplify this point, I think we all feel that way. I think we all struggle with fear of rejection and abandonment. I think we all fear of not being loved, and we all have the fear of being left behind or forgotten or not being worthy. And I live with that every day of my life, and at least for the past 48 years I have. And so,
onward and upward, Mike.
Onward and upward.
Yeah.
You're right. And but my advice to you, just I don't know if it's an advice thing, but it's just to go live, because you can't control other people. You can't control the reactions. You can't control. One other thing I learned, which I find is bizarre, and I'll share this with you, and you can roll your eyes if you need to, but during this process in my life, when we always hear these things like be present, be in the present moment, meditate, and it's like, and a lot of times you're like, what does that mean? Like, meditate, like what, I hold my yoga pose and, but it's really, there's a calmness and a connection to what the world is and where we are. And when we pause for a minute and we think about, we always have this desire to control the outcomes of everything. I do now. I'm heading home right now, and I'm trying to control an outcome that I can't control. All I can say and do is pray and connect. But our job is to not control the outcome of other people, but to live our own truth. And I think when we live our own truth and we're in the moment of our own truth, the rest of life unfolds in front of us the way it's supposed to, based on how we're treating ourselves and other people in the moment. And I have that belief now.
I love it, Mike. Let's get into this week's 5 things, this week's good vibes. I love your wisdom. Love the wisdom. All right, the first story this week comes from Australia, which has a new right to disconnect law where employees can ignore work emails and texts outside of working hours without fear of punishment, because Australians worked an average of 281 hours of unpaid overtime last year. So kind of a crazy little law there in Australia, perhaps an overreach, but I think it's ultimately good.
Yeah, I don't think it's an overreach at all. I think it should be a global law. I mean, I think we have taken what corporate America has framed us into be, and we just work our lives away. And I think, I went to school in Spain. I went to University of Madrid for a semester when I was 22, and they had siesta. And, we'd be walking to the store in the middle of the day after class to grab something, and everything was shut down. And it was a hard thing to recognize, but you know what? Like, we don't live to work. That is not our purpose in life, to live to work. Our purpose is to find fulfillment and find ways to give to others and find ways to give back to God by using the skills that we've been given by God. It's not to work in culture and burn ourselves out to death of depression and sadness and grief and shame and guilt and all that negative, toxic nonsense that our culture has created for us. And that's really the separation. So the short answer is I 100% agree with it. It should be your choice to work whenever the hours, again, the 9 to 5, whatever. But outside of the 9 to 5, and I'm a big believer in this in our company as well. We're a startup organization. We've been hustling for 4 years to survive. We don't expect our team to work all the time. You need to have a life. You need to find fulfillment and balance. And so I'm 100% on board with it. We ought to do the same thing here.
All right. I love it. The second story this week comes from the UK, where in London, a viral campaign has placed baby dolls in baby-wearing slings on statues of famous men. So the idea is to start conversations about the importance of challenging outdated views of masculinity. So imagine walking around London and looking at a statue of a famous old man and seeing a baby sling on it with a baby doll inside the sling. I think it's hilarious and fantastic.
Ooh, that's a tough one to answer. I'm not sure I'm understanding the entire point. I like it in the two ways I'm dissecting it in my brain is one is, we have to eliminate this perspective that men don't have feelings, that men need to cover up all their stuff and live with their hell inside of their head based on what we were created to believe we are to be. And so I love the fact that we're talking about men having vulnerability and men being able to cry and men being able to accept their faults and take accountability without crucifixion and recognize that we're all human and we all fail, but we all deserve to be treated respectfully and kindly, and we should be able to talk about hard things and admit our depression and admit our fears and admit our sadness, and we are allowed that, and we all should be that way. The other side of the coin, again, which I don't know, but I'm a big believer in masculinity. I'm a big believer that men have a purpose on this planet. I'm a big believer that women do as well. We all do. But I don't think we should be stripping masculinity away from men because we think that's what culture wants. That's complicating the subject. Masculinity is a need. It is a necessity for existence. And we cannot strip away masculinity from men. We should be infusing masculinity into men and not taking it away. So the purpose of, hey, it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to cry, it's okay to hug your mom, it's okay to hug your friend, it's okay to cry and hug your dog. That's
it's okay to wear your baby.
Exactly. And you know what? I am a father of three, but I was a father of three babies under 3, and the most joyful thing in my existence was bathing my kids, was feeding my kids, was playing with my kids, was crying with my kids, was reading with my kids. I grew up in a house where I don't recall that being what happened to me. But by God, if I'm going to let what some culture tell me how I'm going to love someone. And so
I love
we need men in this world. We need men in masculinity, but we also need to be vulnerable, and it's okay with that. We should be okay with that too. And that should be embraced, actually.
I love it. I love it. You're absolutely right. Well, the third story this week comes from Connecticut, which has clapped back to Florida. So recently, Florida's tourism website removed its LGBTQ plus section. It's sort of one of the many things Florida has done in anti-LGBTQ news lately. And so Connecticut, in response, has launched ads all over inviting LGBTQ plus travelers from Florida and beyond. So I just sort of love the response. I love sort of the proactive approach, or the kind of fun reactive approach here.
Yeah, I'm on both sides again of this one. I feel like in some ways the corruption of our world is, and I get the good side. Hey, we're all welcome, you all belong, but at the same time, we shouldn't have to do campaigns to create space for people. My background is in marketing and advertising. I feel like in some ways, is our intention with that the right intention? Or is someone saying, hey, we've got an opportunity to collect, right? And again, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not making assumptions that that's the position. But I struggle with that, and you can get into a political game with this thing. You can go any different way, but when we bring it back to the core of what humanity is, we should all be able to go everywhere we want to go, as long as we're all implementing kindness, compassion, empathy, understanding, those things. So whether you are homosexual, you are straight, you're a transgender, you're Hispanic, you're Muslim, you have a disability, you're in a wheelchair, it doesn't matter. We should be able to go anywhere we want to go to exist on God's earth, not what somebody created for us. We should not be limited based on our own material creation. We should be able to enjoy where we want to be. So I love the fact that they're doing it because people want to feel included and loved and supported and appreciated.
That's right.
I get all that. I just hope and pray that it's not a little roundabout way to generate more income for the CBB, which oftentimes it is. So I hope that it's
well, you know what? I think there's a win-win because, the Connecticut has great inclusive policies. It sort of checks the boxes in terms of like what an LGBTQ inclusive state should be. And so I think that, if we can find a win-win, it's not like they're doing an ad campaign and then when you get there, the homophobia police are out, so.
I hope not.
That's right.
Here's the one thing I would say, though, on that last note, is as long as the physical locations are accessible for people. Again, because oftentimes the DEI movement can be forgetful, and in a way we get focused on one direction or the other, but we're missing the bigger picture in terms of, hey, when people come here that may not look like us or walk like us or act like us, can they experience our destination, our museums, our hotels, our restaurants, our walkways, our food, our waterways? Can they enjoy that if they are differently abled? And to me, that is the takeaway that I would, and I agree with you as well. There's definitely a win-win here. We'll see how it plays out.
That's right. Okay, the fourth story this week comes from Bank of America, which has a life event services team that offers personalized support for employees facing significant life events. So this is 150 professionals from diverse backgrounds like social work and emergency services, and they assist employees 24/7 through crises like domestic violence, natural disasters, terminal illness, retirement, losing a loved one. They have handled over 600,000 cases. I think this is a really important benefit, Mike.
Amazing. It's a life-changing benefit, and this to me is not a contradiction, but this is sort of the putting out the good first and seeing what will happen. So in Connecticut space, it's like, hey, we see an opportunity. Florida's not doing it. We're going to do it. We're going to capitalize. Again, I'm not trying to say that in a bad way, but I'm connecting the two dots. In this way, in my opinion, is they're saying, hey, we're not looking for show and go. Maybe somebody picked this up on a PR wire, but regardless, it is the right thing to do. It is a movement that should maintain. And to me, just hearing that, it's like doing something for someone without expecting them to thank you, without being seen. It's like that, again, it's doing for others, and then what comes from that, that can be divine. And I think in Bank of America's case is, hey, we've got people that struggle every day. This world, this culture is getting the way it is. Everyone is scared. Everyone is confused. Everyone hurts. Why not put amazing people behind us to help our team and help our people? And what does that do? It creates a culture of love and kindness and acceptance. And what does that do? It gets around the block, and people want to work with organizations that are doing good. And so I love this one. I think it's fantastic. I hope that other organizations jump on board with it, because at the end of the day, we're not just here to work. And these
That's
types
right.
of activities or these benefits can save people's lives and can bring out the best in other people, and that's what I love about this.
I love it too. Well, the last story this week comes from a Nissan plant in Sunderland, UK, in which a bumper paint team took the initiative to learn British Sign Language, BSL, to support their 4 deaf colleagues. So now, with the company's support, visual aids were integrated, training was offered to help employees communicate better, and it's just good for everyone. Great for morale, great for productivity. I mean, it's a really small story, but I think it speaks volumes.
Yeah, I don't think it should be a small story. And that, again, that's just another rational validation to folks with disabilities are still not part of the DEI world. I mean, it's I've pat them on the back because I think again, this is the same thing we've been saying since we've been talking, but it's about putting your other person ahead of yourself. And you've got 4 people that can't understand, well, what other way are they going to unless you step up and you learn and do something for them? And so, again, I think this is a story that should be spread much further throughout. I think organizations should all be considering that. And I think, again, assistive technology and AI and all these cool things out there that scare a lot of us, that scare all of us, there's some good in there too. And I think it's going to help folks with disabilities communicate better. I think it's going to help other people get a sense of what other people are going through from an empathy perspective. And I think this is a beautiful story, and I love hearing it. We should hear more of these.
I love it too. I love it too. I wanted to see it go beyond 4 people, right? So we got to keep this momentum going. All right, Mike, it has been awesome having you on the show this week. Can you tell folks, give me something that's giving you hope in this work of DEI? Can you share that with folks?
Wow, you're going to end with that kind of question. What's giving me hope? All right, I'll tell you what's giving me hope is that I'm seeing change, not only in the world. And again, I don't mean that in the broad sense of what the media is doing, what the culture is doing. I'm seeing it in people that I know. And when John and I started the company 4 years ago, I remember making phone calls and people would say things like, well, they're not our folks with disabilities on our target, or we don't think we have anybody that would come to our website, or it's just not a priority, or we'll get to it when we redo our website in 2 years. And to see where we've come today with new laws being rolled out in Colorado, new laws being rolled out in Pennsylvania, that there are requirements that organizations, public institutions, specifically any public institution, needs to be fully accessible, not just compliant, but fully accessible and usable by 2026. There are mandates now that are saying, hey, it's time that we wake up and recognize that there are millions of other people out there that are dependent on the same technology that we are, but yet we're incapable of stepping up to the plate and resolving our issues because we don't want to, or we don't have the budget to be that way. And to me, I'm seeing a huge shift in people. We work with over 200 companies. We work with some of the most incredible people I've ever met, and I mean that with my entire heart. People that are courageous, people that want to make change, people that are doing something good, people that are stepping out in a line of fire saying, we've been doing this for 100 years this way, but I don't believe we should. And I'm going to step up and say something, whether it costs my life, costs my job, costs my career, but we need to do better. And I'm seeing that over and over and over and over again. And it's really, in a time of being exhausted from what I do every day and what we've created, it's something that keeps me going every day, because every day I meet somebody else that says, oh my God, I had no idea I was excluding people intentionally. I'm going to do something different about this. And that's what keeps me going.
I love it. That's a great, great story, Mike. Thank you. I had no idea that there were some of those laws, so I got to make sure I get them in a future 5 things as they happen. So this week's call to action, speaking of accessibility, is your organization's website fully accessible? Mine is not. There are some things that we added that now need to be updated. So I'm going to include a link to Ablr so you can get your free website accessibility assessment. Mike, how can folks get in touch with you?
Well, they can call my cell phone anytime they want, 484-459-9990. I will tell you, I may not answer on the first ring because I may not know it, but I will get back to you, and I say that sincerely. All of our clients have my cell phone. Our website is Ablr360.com, so ABLR360.com. We also have a YouTube channel and a podcast called Access Granted, which is a great podcast. We got Ulta Beauty getting released next month. They just started our training with 50,000 of their employees, so we're going to be talking to them. There's a lot of great content out there. There's a lot of great things coming from our incredible team. We are grateful and humbled and blessed to be doing what we're doing. And you know, if anyone out there sees this and has a need, we'd love to talk with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And folks, if you don't already get the 5 Things newsletter, you can subscribe at 5thingsdei.com. Thanks, Mike. Have a great week.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. It's good to talk to you.